Welcome to the One Zen Fitness Podcast. My name is Kieran Cronin and I have over 17 years experience within the fitness, health and nutrition industry. Please share this podcast with friends and share with love. Please spread the word. Go to www.onezenacademy.com. Welcome, guys. Sorry for the delay in between podcasts. I hope this finds you well. This is Kieran, as per usual, in this solo cast. I hope it finds you well. Sorry there's been such a delay. I'm a busy person trying to establish the academy. For those of you who want to be personal trainers, sports therapists, yoga practitioners, want a first aid qualification, kettlebell qualification, the usual stuff. So I've been focusing on that, and it's 7 days a week, unfortunately, as well as family commitments. You know the score. But I thought I would take this opportunity to go through a solo cast, and it's around this time of year where people kind of start thinking about marathons and training, those sorts of things next year, Ironman events and so on. So I also want to kind of break down how to program successfully cardiovascular training and what it looks like, what has to go into it, because a lot of people have an opinion on it, I guess, and they will be more of a dictator with it, and they'll say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to get these trainers, you need to do this, and before you know it, you've just bought into their whole belief system. And that's fine. They might be awesome in what they do, that's fantastic, but if you want a tried and tested method, something you can repeat to yourself with anyone, then this is what I'm going to go through, something that minimizes injury as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight into it. I hope you don't mind. I know time is precious and all that. So imagine with your cardiovascular training, it's important to establish where you are now and where you want to be. So we look at things like SMART goals. Okay, so SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and what's the other one? Time. So instead of saying I'm going to run a marathon, it might be a case of within the next 12 months, I aim to complete the marathon within 5 hours. And that is your specific SMART goal. So you've created this very clear definition of what you want to achieve. You then work backwards to where you are now. And it might be a case of, what do I need to do to achieve that this week? It might be a case of, I just need to actually put one foot in front of the other and start running. But it's important that you have a clear goal on what you want to achieve based on whether it's realistic for you or not. And this may come with a bit of tweaking throughout. But generally speaking, when we look at planning, we're looking at 4 main phases. So we'll look at phase 1, which is your foundational base training, which we'll go into shortly. 2, transition or threshold training. 3, speed or power training. And then 4 is your taper phase. And what we're going to do, we're just going to take a little dive into what all of these actually look like. Okay, so when we measure kind of any of what I'm about to talk about, you can look in terms of heart rate. So there's the older Carbonian formula, which is 220 minus your age, gives your maximum heart rate. So say, for instance, you were 40 years old, 220 minus 40, and you get 180 as your maximum heart rate. Now, in terms of cardiovascular, as you'll find out, it's about 65% of that. And so if I'm 40 years old, my maximum is 180, 65% of that's 117. Don't worry, That's not quick maths. I have got a calculator in front of me. So it's 117. Now you may be thinking 117 beats per minute. And if you know anything about heart rate, you may be thinking, I could get that on a brisk walk. Okay, then that's exactly where you start, is that brisk walk. And this is the thing that people straight away need to get hold of. People start running because they think it's what they should do because everyone else is doing it, but it's very much ego-led. It's not anything to do with the actual science and the crux of it. I know on an incline, okay, a decent incline and a brisk walk, I can get to 117. Okay, so do I need to run? Well, no, I'm exercising the same muscles, but maybe I start there, to get that consistency. And this is about longevity. This is about minimizing injury and maximizing performance, not hitting the ground, literally running for the sake of running with no real kind of idea what I'm doing. And within a week or so time, I'm starting to get niggles, starting to get injuries and so on. So if you don't want that, then I would listen in. So when we look at different types of training, we look at different zones. So we've got zones 1 to 5. And imagine zone 1 is like your recovery. And your heart rate, for instance, will be between 50 to 60%. So for me, it might be, 90 to maybe 100, 105 beats per minute. This might just be a leisurely walk. So I know on my recovery days shouldn't be just sitting on my arse. They should be movement based. Not anything drastic, but it should be just a leisurely walk around. But I need to try and get this into my everyday life as much as possible because I know it enhances recovery. What doesn't enhance recovery is doing nothing. Okay, people say, oh, but sleep. Yeah, sleep's important, but during the day, sleep is not important unless you didn't get any during the nighttime. My point is, sleep is sleep and it's appropriate for when it's appropriate. During the daytime, it's important to move. Get off your ass and move any way you can. Okay, whether it's little pockets of movement breaks. This always enhances your recovery. It gets things moving and grooving, gets things shifting. So if I'm severely deconditioned, well, it's a probably good place to start. I can use it as a initial warm up and cool down. I can use it as a maintenance of my minimal aerobic base. Or I can use it as active recovery in between intervals. More on that later. But although it's not necessarily going to increase my aerobic base or aerobic fitness, it definitely will enhance recovery. So really important to establish good habits as you move on. Zone 2, however, is a bit more important. This is that 60 to 75%. So I mentioned the 65%. Okay, if we look at 75%, well, it's 135. Okay, for me, I can maintain a very steady, and I do mean steady pace jog at about 135, maybe slightly over. And this is what people generally call their foundation training. So remember that first initial thing that I said was your foundation training. This is where this sits. Some people will use this as their long, slow duration run on a Sunday morning and they go out for an hour or two. This is what that should look like. You shouldn't be going above, if it was me, who is around the 40 years of age, I know, unbelievably, it shouldn't be really above 135 beats a minute. So it's a really steady pace. And I know when I've been out for like a 2-hour run, if I am getting above 135, I bring it down to a walk. There's no shame in that. In fact, a lot of top coaches out there, okay, would swear by it because you're training the system. Okay, people think, well, I'm just going to go training. Hard and fast is better. Hard and fast is a sure way of burning out. If you don't want to burn out and you want consistency, knowing that your marathon, for instance, say the London Marathon, is April 26th. Okay, From the time of this recording, it's like 9 months away. Okay, I don't want to be burning out by Christmas. I want to be peaking around 9 months. In order to do that, I need to actually use science and put my ego aside and be honest about my ability and where I am now. So this is an effective training zone for that long, slow duration work. It is also suitable for beginners to build an aerobic foundation. But it's going to be the area that you're going to keep coming back to. You're going to do this more than anything. You know, you're going to use your aerobic energy system. So aerobic just means with oxygen. Okay, you're going to use your aerobic energy system and the oxygen to break down energy around this sort of rate. But the marathon that you're going to run, or the Ironman triathlon, or even the half marathon, a high percentage of it, okay, 85, 90, 95% is going to be aerobic. So technically then 80, 85, 90, 95% of your training should be aerobic base, which means training at 135 beats per minute if it was me. Now, training at 135, you may start off with an hour and think, wow, that's actually quite tricky to maintain 135 beats for an hour. 2 months down the line though, I can maintain 135, but my pace actually might be quite good. Okay, so fitness will increase. You will experience this, but you need the consistency in your training and the persistence in your training. Without those, well, it doesn't matter. Your race next year isn't the sum total of that one run that you did. Okay, remember that. So most of your training should revolve around that. Now, if you're starting to train now around October time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks later, depending on how you feel, you want to start starting to bring in zone 3 type training. And zone 3, this is where you'll start to get into your more anaerobic threshold area, and you'll experience a significant rapid rise in your blood lactate. And lactate is just an increasing breakdown of carbohydrates or glycogen from muscle stores. And this in turn increases hydrogen ions within your blood, and this makes it more acidic, and you may experience that burning sensation. But this is where I'm going to start to put some intervals or more speedy sessions. So zone 3 might be the 5k park run on that Saturday morning if you live in the UK. It might be, I'm just going to do some fartlek training. And fartlek training, Swedish word for speed play, is that kind of unestablished interval training where you're running, you think, I'm going to run as fast as I can to that, the third lamppost, and you run to that, and then you bring the tempo back down again, and then someone else who you're running with says, let's sprint to that park bench, or let's run up that hill. It's that kind of, it's the variance in the interval training that counts. So this is where you'll start to kind of bring those sorts of intervals within this. And you can get up to 90% of your maximum heart rate with this. Now, I'm not saying that you should, but if you did, I mean, for me, that would be about 160 thereabouts. So I would look to try and get that significant rapid increase in my heart rate. And what you'll find is with this, you'll get it really stimulates the cardiovascular adaptations to raise your aerobic threshold. Now, the issue is, if I'm constantly then doing this, which a lot of people fall into the trap of doing because, they're sweating and so on, you won't, after a while, you won't get the gains you want, but the effort will still be quite tough. And this is a big issue within this, and you start slipping into what they call black hole training. So you feel like you're doing a lot, like a 5k park run. If you did it every week, okay, you'll feel like you're getting some decent gains, but it just feels that way. In fact, the gains you're getting are quite small, but your chance of injury and burnout will become quite alarming, to be fair. and this is called black hole training. A lot of people fall into this. Myself, I fell into this at some point when I was training for my first marathon in 2010, London Marathon. I just didn't recognize it, and I should know better. But yeah, black hole training, you need to really take more of a science-based approach with this training. If you're going to do it, you will get an increase in tolerance to higher lactate threshold, so you can kind of really pick up the tempo. But if I constantly do this, the amount of impact going through my joints and muscles, it means I need to recover longer. And if I'm not recovering longer, or my recovery strategies are shit, then I'm going to burn out, I'm going to get injured, and so on. Now, what this might look like in terms of, threshold training. Imagine I want to increase my lactate threshold. I may do 1 minute, about 90%, so really kind of hard, and then 2 minutes at moderate pace, so like a steady pace run. Okay, so that's 1 minute hard, 2 minutes steady pace, and then I may do 5 to 10 sets of this. Okay, so if I'm doing 10 sets, that's about 30 minutes worth. That's pretty tough. But that'll be enough to kind of increase my threshold quite a bit. Or within this phase, I can do what they call an aerobic interval. So an aerobic interval, so the lactate was a 1-to-2 ratio normally. So you have twice as much rest or active recovery as workload. Aerobic is 1-to-1. So if I'm doing 4 minutes running quite hard, maybe at an 80%er, it means I have to have an equal amount of active recovery. So 4 minutes around the 60 to 70%. So there might not be a massive change between them, and it'll be quite tough. That's 8 minutes per set. You're looking at doing 3 to 8 sets of that. So that's 4 minutes, you're picking up the pace, 80% of your maximum heart rate. 4 minutes at moderate pace, 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. And then you repeat up to 8 times. Okay, so I may do aerobic intervals, or I may do lactate intervals. And it's up to me to kind of judge, what I want to do on what day. If you're a beginner, or you've coming off a layoff and you've done your initial base training, your aerobic training between 8 to 12 weeks, it's worth just then introducing an aerobic interval, that 1-to-1 ratio. So basically a 1-to-1 ratio, it'll be anything above 2 to 3 minutes really. Okay, so that's when I'll really start tapping into my aerobic system. I would start there and start at maybe the lesser level, maybe 3 to 5 sets, and then see how you get on. So just kind of integrate one of those sessions into your training plan a week, and ideally you should be running about 3 to 4 times per week. Okay, that's your base training. So in 12 weeks time, if I'm running 4 times a week, one of those sessions now will be an aerobic interval session. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Imagine 4 to 6 weeks on from that. So this will take you well into January now, probably February. I want to start putting zone 4 training in, and zone 4 is very much anaerobic. Arguably, it's more of your top end of your lactate, going into more the creatine phosphate system as well. So this high-end interval training really, really significantly increases your blood lactate and increases your metabolism. So you need to be mindful of your diet after this. I know when I do these sessions, within about an hour and 90 minutes, I'm starving, and I'm starving for the rest of the day. Now, if I have not very good dietary habits, I'm probably going to overeat. And this is a common theme amongst people training for marathons, is that they constantly overeat, overestimate kind of how much they can handle. And on days where, like on the long run, where you deplete a lot of glycogen stores, or one of these really hard and fast interval sessions that increases your metabolism, you'll overeat. If you don't have established eating patterns, you'll overeat, and then you'll put on weight and think, why the hell am I putting on weight? This is really common. And if you're putting on weight at the same time you're doing all this, as much as it pains me to say, we still have to fight gravity every day. Your chance of an overuse injury then starts to increase. Because if I was 13 stone before, and then with all this training, overeating, I'm getting fitter, but I'm getting heavier, and I'm now 14 stone. Well, that's a significant amount of more impact that's going through my joints, especially when I'm stepping up the pace. So you can be strong, but strong and big just means you're going to expend more energy. Okay, so for instance, every 100 grams extra that you carry is like you need an extra 1% oxygen just to maintain that pace. That's why you get a lot of marathon runners that have an optimal weight between 55 to 60 kilos, because that's an optimal kind of weight to power ratio with endurance that allows them to get those optimal times. The bigger that you are, the more energy it takes to get that mass around that course. You can be the strongest guy in the world, but you're still going to use a lot more energy, and that energy is then hard to maintain as you travel that 26 miles. So when we're looking at the top end aerobics, so zone 4, okay, zone 4 is like 80 to 95%. Zone 5 is like 95% to 100. So these are really your kind of creatine phosphate like thresholds, and what and a CP or creatine phosphate interval might look like is like 20 seconds hard, so 20 seconds all out sprint, 60 seconds moderate. So 20 seconds 100%, you're trying to max out basically. It's then 60 seconds, a minute of around 70% of maximum heart rate, or 7 RPE, your rate of perceived exertion. But when most people fall down on this, they don't get enough volume in. Okay, so you're looking at about 20 sets of that. So that's pretty tough. So you may be thinking, I'm not sure actually, I want to do that on the concrete. So you may want to find, either a decent athletics track, you may want to find some grass, something with a softer impact, because this is quite severe. If you don't want to do it as part of running, but you want to use similar muscles, so you can go on like a step mill, a cross trainer, or even a rowing machine to kind of really start tapping into the creatine phosphate system, which is your really explosive energy. And you may be thinking, well, I'm an endurance athlete, why do I need explosive energy? Explosive energy, if you want to overtake people, if you want to finish well, it's those sorts of issues. It will also start to increase your VO2 max as well, which is your ability to take on oxygen and use it within the body. So it starts to increase that, but obviously you then get a lot more impact, and it takes a lot longer to recover. So be mindful of when you use that. So just to kind of reiterate, foundation training, or your bread and butter throughout all of it, is the zone 2 type training. Zone 1 is your recovery. So zone 2, this is where you're going to utilize that really long, slow endurance training. The transition and threshold training, which we mentioned, this is where you start integrating like your interval sessions. Speed and power training, you'll do this probably on the 4 to 6 weeks prior to your taper period. So if I'm training for the London Marathon, for instance, April 26th, I'm going to have 3 weeks taper, which I'll talk about shortly. The 6 weeks prior to that, I may start implementing at least one session a week, which is more speed power training. Okay, if you didn't want to do speed power training, I'd probably opt for more weight training, which I would do throughout anyway. But what is the taper phase? So the taper phase is a way to maximize your recovery and maximize your performance. And during the taper phase, bear in mind, 3 weeks out from the competition, that's going to be your most intense, voluminous week. So that's going to be the time where I'm going to max out the most amount of miles I'm going to do is within that week. The most intensity is within that week. So I'm really peaking my physical ability or what I can do then. Okay, 3 weeks out. Okay, 3 weeks out, you're going to reduce the intensity and the volume by 25%. Okay, by 25%. So, for instance, if you're the type of person who's doing maybe 60 miles a week, you're going to reduce by 15 miles that week. Okay. In week 2, or taper week 2, you're going to reduce then by 50%. Okay, so now you're only doing half your maximum miles and the intensity that you were doing before. It then, in the week leading up to the marathon, it's 25%. Okay, so you're only doing 25%. And your body goes into a super compensation. So imagine your whole body was prepared for kind of the high volume, high intensity. You're then reducing. But because we're still moving and grooving, you put a lid on your performance. You put a lid on those miles. So they're still in your legs, but now your body has a chance to recover. So the muscles in your legs, for instance, go through capillarization quite drastically. So capillaries are like these little blood vessel cross bridges between your arteries and your veins. So this allows you to transport things more readily. You increase the amount of mitochondria you have, so the power stations within your cell that basically produce energy. You drastically increase these. You then drastically increase the amount of stored carbohydrates, glycogen within your muscles. So what you'll notice, especially on the week prior, you'll see these really full muscles. Okay, they'll look like they're bulging, like your quadriceps will look like they're massive. Within that week as well, what most people do is carbo loading. So if you're generally going down the stereotypical route, you'll carbo load 48 to 72 hours before that competition. With that super compensation, your leg muscles will look massive. Be expected to put on some weight as well. That's quite normal because of the extra energy. I promise you'll lose it during the marathon, but this is all quite normal stuff. So the idea of the taper is that when you step onto that start line on that Sunday morning, okay, there's a spring in your step. You feel supercharged and ready to race because it is a race. Maybe you're only racing with yourself, but it is a race. But that's when you remember your original SMART goal. Okay. When I mentioned that you can adjust it based on your training performance. So if you're kind of running, you're thinking originally it was a 5-hour marathon, but actually my longest run was like 20 miles. And I completed it, in decent time, maybe 8.5, 9-minute miling. You're thinking, actually, I might be able to go more towards 4.5 hours. Okay. And it's okay to still stick to that 5 hour, but you may kind of surprise yourself. So you can adjust things based on training. Life happens, sickness happens, family stuff happens, Christmas happens. So be adjustable in your approach. But generally speaking, if you have a plan for the cardiovascular element, then you're onto a winner. So 3 to 4 times a week, one of those has to be a long run. And what I didn't say about the long run is that it's probably more prudent to start at an hour. And this could be a mixture of, remember, this could just be brisk walking for you to begin with. Okay. As your fitness increases, that brisk walk becomes maybe a jog and then a walk, a jog, then a walk. Okay, keep it an hour. As soon as you can then jog lightly for an hour at that heart rate that we discussed, at 65%, okay, that's when on successive weeks you then increase the distance by 10%. So you just add 10%. If at any point you feel little niggles or something's not quite right, then have a recovery week within that. So if you're built up and you're like you're well into it and you're doing a 2-hour run, but after that 2-hour run you're starting to get little niggles, then have like a minor taper week. Okay, so don't stop running, but maybe don't go for that 2-hour 10-minute run. Maybe just come back to an hour and just do a steady tempo pace. Okay, or a light walk. You can come back to it when you need to. Okay, but don't sacrifice your ability to recover just for the sake of getting miles in. Because what will happen is you'll get injured and then you'll definitely have time off. It could be anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks off for the average tendonitis. More likely going to be your Achilles or the patella tendon, so the tendon just below your kneecap. Okay, these are quite common. So just be mindful of that. And I guess while we talk about it, okay, I would personally start putting in some weight training. So yes, an endurance athlete should be doing weight training at least once or twice a week. And you may be thinking, where am I going to find this time? I promise you'll find the time. If you want it badly, you'll find the time. But you should be doing weight training, but keep it to the big movements, a squat, a deadlift, a lunge, maybe a bench press, maybe a bent over row, maybe a shoulder press, maybe a lat pull down or chin up. Keep it simple. And then any core exercises. At first, you're just doing anywhere between 2 to 4 sets of high reps, maybe 12 to 15 reps, with about 30 to 60 seconds rest in between. If you're doing that for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, then start to increase the weight and bring down the repetition. So for those same exercises, I may start doing anywhere between 8 to 10 reps, and I may add a set on all of those to get a bit more volume in. Don't be afraid to do some proper strength training as well. But if you're starting to go heavier and you're unsure, seek out a personal trainer, even if it's just 1 or 2 sessions, or seek out a class that does strength training in particular. They are out there, okay? Or seek out other runners, see what they do. But you should be doing weight training. As cardiovascular exercise increases, there is a certain amount of atrophy or decrease in muscle tissue and breakdown in the proteins. So in order to offset this, we need to do a certain amount of weight training, even if it's just to stop atrophy, keep that spring in our step. And strength training has been shown one of the most best ways of decreasing or minimizing injuries associated with running and just other practices. So even if you're an Ironman triathlete, you should be doing weight training and obviously core strength training and so on. And I haven't even touched upon diet and nutrition, but that's definitely for another time. So if you've just found out that you're in the London Marathon or you're planning next year's marathon, then now's the time to start thinking about your plan of action. Don't wait until January. Don't be one of those people. Don't think, on January 2nd, that's when I'm going to start. You won't. You're in peak winter. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's cold, it's horrible. Don't start then. Start now. Start now while it's still relatively light and relatively mild. Start good habits now. Get into that routine. Establish running patterns, because I promise you it will not happen in January. It will then get to February and you'll think, oh yeah, I'll do some training now. Okay? If you look at the start line of any marathon, you'll see a lot of mixture of people. You'll see the people that you can tell they're well prepped, they're well versed, but you'll also see a growing number of people who think they can wing it. You probably could on the day. You're not going to do anything significant, and why do that? You could just do that anytime. You could put 26.2 miles into your iPhone or whatever you're using and just walk or run that in your own time. There's no, it doesn't make sense. So plan and train. Get some decent footwear. Okay, get some decent footwear. Now, I'm not for or against trainers. I mean, I'm quite a minimalist runner. I run in a mixture of things, to be fair. I've got Zero shoes, which are like sandals. I've got Vibram Five Fingers. I've got Vivos. And I've got Ultra, which are more cushioned runners. So on days where I'm not feeling it and I'm a bit tired because my 4-month-old has kept me up, I'll probably put my cushioned shoes on because I don't really want to rely too much on my nervous system to gauge the different terrain. But on days where I'm feeling up for it and I feel quite good, I'll go in my sandals because I get a lot better out of it, more running capacity out of it. But go with what you feel. I'm not going to kind of impose my beliefs. regardless if they're based in science, on you. But what I will strongly advise is get structure in your plan. And it goes without saying, that old saying, fail to plan, plan to fail. Okay, and I know that's cheesy, it's a bit of a one-liner, but it is so true. I've even done volunteer work at lots of different marathons in terms of massage treatment afterwards. And I see a mixture of people coming in. I mean, I may treat maybe 30, 40 people. That was one year for St. John's Ambulance. They just kept streaming in. I was like, yeah, bring it on. And I saw a mixture of runners who you could tell they're just plans and they were knackered. And then the runners who hadn't planned as much and they needed medical attention. Okay, it's 26 miles that you're gonna take on. Okay, remember that. Respect it. Don't underestimate it. Okay, if you train for it, if you plan, you'll get so much more out of it on the day. And if you're anything like me, you'll cross that finish line and you'll blubber like an idiot because you know how much you put into it. You know the blood, sweat and tears that you've spent over it. And it will all be worth it. I can't emphasize this enough. When you cross that line, it's all sorts of emotions that come out. Yeah, really, really was. I loved every minute of it. And my background originally is more weight training and that whole side of it. So for me, it was really tough, really taxing. I'm not a light person. Even now I'm probably about 88, 89 kilos. Okay, so that's a lot of energy that is required of me to get my big buttocks around any marathon or even half marathon or even a 10K. Okay, so just be mindful of that. Okay, and on that note, I'll leave it there because I've been rambling for quite a bit. But I hope if you are looking to run, you got something out of this. If you do want more information about how to plan and train for this, then go to www.onezenacademy.com. Our new website is up and running as of this morning. So have a look around. If you really, really want to know more, then why not kind of jump on one of our personal training courses? Even if you've got no intention of being a personal trainer, we can take you through everything you ever possibly need to create a plan for yourself for any goal of any situation, fitness situation. If terrorists jumped in, we don't kind of go over like terrorism and stuff like that. So, as I'm sure you can appreciate, that's quite a big topic. But fitness related and training related and sport related, yes, we've got you covered for that. We also delve into nutrition. So, and it's not just this is a carbohydrate, this is a protein. We actually look into the coaching and behavior change and all of those, important things that we really need to know that are often overlooked. So yeah, basically get on it. Obviously there's other podcast episodes that we've done on running, weight training and so on. So look them up. And yeah, if you've got any questions, just ping me an email. My email address is on the website. Look us up on Instagram. Okay, share this podcast with your friends. Get them to subscribe. We love you and we care passionately about this, but we need your support all the time. If we don't have your support, then I'm basically talking to myself in my house. And although my cat is listening to me, because I can see its ears pricking up, it has no idea what I'm saying unless I say the words food, or I say Bagpuss, which is his name, or I say Momo, which is my other cat, or I say Pokey, which is my other cat. That's it. That's as good as it gets for me. So that's enough of me rambling. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy. Thanks for listening to the One Zen Fitness Academy podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. Please give us a 5-star review. And please, if it's not too much trouble, write a review. For more information, go to www.onezenacademy.com for all your fitness, wellness, and health needs. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.